Got it. Hi, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. I'm Erica Johnson. My title is Founding Executive Director here with Iowa MMJ. And this is our First Fridays virtual lunch and learn that Iowa MMJ has been doing each month for a couple of years now. Um, we've got, thank you, Elena. We've got a good presentation today. It's a little bit different from what we have been doing. Usually we're really focused on immigration policies and things like that, but we wanted to broaden the conversation a little bit today. And I'm so excited to have one of our good friends with us today to help run through this meaty new report that we have. This is Matthew Covington. He's with Iowa CCI. Matthew, do you want to introduce yourself?
You did a pretty good job of it already, but yes, that is me. Uh, been with Iowa CCI for a while and have known and valued our working relationship with Iowa Migrant Movement for Justice. I think since the inception. I'm happy to be here.
Very beginning. Do you want to talk a little bit for folks who don't know, what kind of Iowa CCI is an organization, just real quick, like the elevator pitch, like what kind of issues does CCI work on?
Well, I didn't know this would be a quiz, but I'll give it a shot. And see some familiar faces on the screen and some new names. So yeah, glad that we're all here. But yeah, Iowa Citizens for Community Improvement. We're actually, I believe, AARP eligible now. We've been around for 50 years, statewide organization, work on a variety of issues important to our membership, farming and the environment issues, to a degree, worker justice, newer issue we'll touch on here maybe in a little bit. Fully funding public education so that all students can thrive and survive. Um, yeah, and I think that's the elevator.
We're there. Thank you. Well, so you can go to the next slide, Elena. Thank you. So I kind of wanted to like just start off today with kind of maybe taking a little like poll and talking about this, what's become a sort of dreaded, like, how are you question? This is a question that most of us say to each other when we see each other, just sort of automatically. Hi, how are you? That's the question we all ask. And I've noticed lately that when I ask the question or when I get asked the question, people are responding differently than they used to. Usually it was just kind of like, fine, and that's what you said. But now it's become a little bit more heavy, is maybe a good word for, or what I would call the people's response. And so that's kind of just how I wanted to sort of start off today, just acknowledging that things feel kind of heavy is the word I'm using this November 2025. Um, and with the reality of that, there is also a question of what's bringing you joy or hope these days. And so it was fun to kind of like before we started the recording. I asked, kind of a silly question. What are people doing this weekend? And people left some really interesting things in the chat. Quilting or doing nothing, and just so that's kind of what brought us to this point. We've got a lot of deadlock coming from Washington. We've got a lot of dysfunction coming from Washington. And it's not just Washington, if we're being honest, it's coming from the Iowa State Capitol here in Des Moines. And it's coming from our local communities, whether it's, city government or county government. There's a lot of things to not be thrilled about. And so when there are moments of joy and hope, it's really important, I'm finding, I'm trying to do better at focusing on those things and kind of sitting with them for a while. So we want to shake things up a little bit with this First Friday and highlight something that's giving us hope in this moment. And so, again, just super appreciate our friends at CCI joining us. And we wanted to talk about, I don't know if folks heard, but there was a new report that dropped this week. It's called the Rural Policy Action Report. I think, Elena, you were going to put a link to that report in the chat. If you want to look at it while we're talking, that's fine. But you don't have to dig into it right now. You can save it for later, but we want to give it to you. So what this is sort of feels like a policy vision for all Iowans, rural Iowans, people who don't live in rural spaces around the state, but we all live in Iowa. And so it's we're sort of thinking of it as a roadmap of practical solutions for rural places. And these are ideas that are actually really popular with everyday people from around not just the state of Iowa, but other rural spaces around the country. Um, and we just kind of wanted to talk about this because we know what we've been seeing isn't working for us. And so we wanted to highlight, and I get this question a lot. What are some ideas about how the policy specific ideas about how we fix the systems that are broken? And that's what we want to talk about today. Like, what are some ideas that we could implement from this wonderful report that's just dropped this week and implement those and move us forward? So go into the next slide. And this is hopefully conversational. So I'm going to start by asking Matthew a couple of questions, and there's some really nice graphics here that you can kind of see that are taken from the report. If you've got the report open and you're looking through it, you can see sort of the four pillars that they're recommending that are kind of that group into buckets, these different policy ideas of policy solutions that would work for working people in rural spaces. And then here you can see some of the polling and support for the ideas. You probably can't read that super well. My eyes are really bad. And maybe you can see those, maybe not, but that's in the report. You can kind of just click on the link that Elena dropped and see there. But okay, so Matthew, I'll shut up. I want to hear from you. Couple of questions, three questions maybe. Number one, what stood out to you from the report? Can you share a couple of examples of how the report and the ideas in it apply to your work, the work that CCI is doing, and the communities you work with? Sorry, it was just two questions. The second one kind of had two parts. So number one, what stood out to you from the report? And number two, can you share a couple of examples of how it applies to the work that you're doing and the communities you work with?
Yeah, especially since you only had two questions. But just to build off of that a little bit more, because I don't know about folks on this screen, I don't always get super excited about, ooh, another report. Let me drop what I'm doing and read that or really dig in on that. This one's a little different. This one, it's got a lot of good stuff in it. I think it's 41 pages, but don't anyone worry. There's lots of photographs and some charts. And so it takes less time to read. But how this came about, it wasn't just somebody in DC or San Francisco that hosted a few focus groups and then a bunch of consultants put it together. This was put together by 40 grassroots everyday groups like Iowa MMJ, CCI. We were actually two of four Iowa organizations that helped contribute to this, but there was 40 groups across the country that did this from Nebraska, Michigan, the Dakotas, Montana, Indiana, Alaska, and more, and really focused on what's meaningful to rural folks, to people in the heartland and rural places, and and I mean, so what stood out to me was that these are issues elevated in this report that I think cut across race, place, age, and that especially political ideology. And so, I mean, yeah, the polling and popular support. I'm not wearing my glasses, but I do have a bigger version here. But like, you know, 87% of people polled, that they did this, believe in protecting our air, water, and natural resources from corporate and agricultural polluters and runoff. 76% support requiring rich people and corporations to pay their fair share of taxes to invest in tools and opportunities for working people. Just a few of those. And so that um, I think the report shows that in an era of political polarization, that again, as I think we all know here on the screen, that there's a lot more that brings us together than separates us. And if we talk about the issues that matter to people in our communities, next door to us, that we find that commonality and we break through barriers and the noise that seeks to pit us against each other, well, I would argue a select wealthy few keep on benefiting at our expense. And so, yeah, the other thing there that Elena has is like the four pillars that stood out there. And I know there's some folks on this call that probably actually don't have experience or could speak to a number of these, like in the first pillar that supporting rural economies, empower workers, but also where did it go here? Yeah, pillar four, stewarding our land and natural resources. I mean, I think Elston, just as one example, could probably see a lot that resonates with them or speak to that, how these are popular policies. But a few that, yeah, relate to our work. I would say I mentioned earlier public education, and it's probably not news to too many folks on this call, but here in Iowa, we've got our private school voucher program or scheme that funnels public money to private schools. And at CCI, we have no problem with private schools if that's what people want to choose. But we believe in using public money for the public good. And we have chronically underfunded our public schools for more than 10 years now at about a 2 to 2.5% increase in state supplemental aid, when really to keep pace with inflation and the needs of our schools, especially our rural schools, we need 5%. And so our state leaders have not been doing this, and I think we've seen the effects of that. And so I'm sure we've all heard of rural school closures. Most recent was Orient Maxburg, just west of here, because we're not both our schools and then I'd say some of our rural communities are not getting the investments they need to thrive and to sustain themselves. And so, this report again came up with by people in red states, blue states, rural communities, calls for fully funding schools, not sending money to private vouchers. Um, and I think that's something that we're all familiar with here. Also, especially when 41 of Iowa's counties don't have a private school option, and all those counties are rural. Another thing that on the like more farm and the environment side, then I suppose I'll pass it back to you, Erica, eventually. But another thing that this report calls on that we've heard from folks is strengthening food labeling uh, uh, to combat misleading tools used by meat packers and big corporations that don't want us to know where our food comes from. And so that's just calling for simple country of origin labeling. We should know where our food comes from. Uh, Hold multinational corporations accountable for not only the pollution they create, but also the damage they do to us. Um, and so that's something that we're all too familiar with here in Iowa with Bayer, who bought Monsanto, who produced Roundup. Thousands of people have gotten sick, harmful health impacts from use of Roundup, and yet they're trying to silence us by preventing us from being able to take them to court to hold them accountable for the damage they do to us. So these are just some things that come across as common sense. Not to mention, I say, ensuring rural hospitals get the funding they need to stay open. As for we've heard stories from folks we know or we've experienced ourselves that how far are you going to have to drive in rural areas to get basic care that you need? And like our rural public schools, too many of our hospitals are facing strains. And if these politicians in DC keep ignoring these issues and instead pass tax cuts for the wealthy, then we're going to continue to get left behind. And then I suppose I want to hear a little bit from you, Erica. I got another visual that I printed out. Some other stuff lifted up in that report. This story, an immigration success story in the heartland, and highlighting some of the stuff that Iowa MMJ has been working on, and that really showed that we're not we're not pitted against each other. We collectively make our community stronger, especially our rural community. So yeah, Erica, what stood out to you?
What stood out to me? I a lot of yeah. So in sum, what you're saying is taking public dollars and investing them in things that aren't necessarily benefiting our community. They're benefiting the few, and the wealthy, and I think one of the things that stood out to me is that kind of theme comes across in immigration too, where we're seeing public money, taxpayer money being taken away from programs that help communities like public schools or seniors programs or veterans programs, and it's being used to inflict harm on immigrant communities. Do people know that ICE is now the best funded, the largest federal law enforcement agency in the country? ICE stands for Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Folks probably know that, but I don't want to assume. And so this is an agency that is inflicting harm in new and creatively cruel ways, almost daily in our communities. And so the little snapshot that Matthew referenced that's in the report is yeah, a story about Marshalltown and how Marshalltown has really blossomed and bloomed because of its immigrant population and in spite of a cruel attack by immigration agents in 2006 that went after meatpacking plant workers at the Swift meat processing facility in town. Um, and the report talks about that story, and the report really highlights how that level of cruelty and I often call it like it's not a natural disaster, it's a government caused disaster. In a community like Marshalltown has really long lasting and ripple effects. And despite all of that, or in spite of that, or whichever it is, the community now, when there was, it wasn't the derecho, I don't think, in what was it, 2020, or maybe it was, but a big windstorm came through. A lot of us throughout the state were impacted. It wasn't quite a tornado, but straight line winds really caused a lot of damage in Marshalltown, and the community came together in really beautiful ways, and is still in the process of rebuilding. And so I think that was a very wordy way to respond to your question, Matthew. What stood out to me is that one of the recommendations in the budget is just, or sorry, in the report, how did they put it? Stop the cruelty on taxpayers' dime. Stop using taxpayer money to go after immigrants in really cruel ways, is one of the biggest takeaways. And then another thing kind of tied on to that to me is that the report really does a good job, I think, of recognizing the contributions that immigrants have in rural communities in Iowa and other spaces. And we kind of maybe get into what Annie just dropped in the chat too. I can only see part of it, but the fact that Iowa's economy is propped up by immigrants, that the only reason that we have population growth in Iowa is due to immigrants. And if immigrants weren't here, many of our rural spaces are communities that are smaller, and even our large communities like Des Moines would be ghost towns. We wouldn't have businesses on main streets. We wouldn't have workers to work in any of the industries that whether it's meatpacking or manufacturing or hospitality or any of these. So one of the things that the report highlights has to do with worker rights, which I think is really helpful. The way they put it is closing the labor abuse loopholes and instead building a government to protect workers. And that's something that is one of the priorities and values and principles that we would really like to see in any policy change, whether immigration or labor laws. So a couple of things specifically related to overtime protections for sure. Another one is enforcing child labor laws. That was something pretty ugly that we saw in our state a couple of years ago at the state house, kind of rolling back protections that would make it harder to or yeah, what do I want to say? They would facilitate violations of child labor laws. Other things like protections for agricultural workers is something that's a really obvious recommendation that's really applicable for Iowa. And then helping keep workers safe from retaliation. We see this all the time. A victim of wage theft, for example, who is, has done a job and they haven't been paid for it. Employers are often threatening workers that they'll report them or they'll take some retaliatory action if they stand up for their rights in the workplace, and that's just not okay. If you do an honest day's work, you should get paid for it. Period. End of story. So those are a couple kind of the big things, and then maybe the biggest thing, I skipped one, um, because it does feel like in my head it feels really obvious, but maybe the biggest thing in all of this that stands out on immigration related things is that there's got to be a path to citizenship. Again, there's just no way around it. This is where we're at. We need a path to citizenship for people who don't have access to any of the avenues that are already difficult in the U.S. immigration system. We need a path to citizenship for undocumented folks so that they can be full members of society and not second-class citizens. All right. Anything else? Any other questions?
No, not yet.
Because I also wanted to point out on this next slide, you don't have to take Matthew and I's word for it necessarily. So there's been some media lately on the report, and we just kind of wanted to draw attention to the fact that that this we think is a really good conversation, and we're glad that that the report has come out. Um, and we're encouraging folks to interact with it. There's a couple of examples here, a couple of media features that have been published in just the last week, I think. One of them again is highlighting the story of Marshalltown. I don't think I have said yet, but I probably should say that Maria Gonzalez is highlighted here. This is a picture of Maria on the right on your screen here. Maria is one of the organizers with Iowa MMJ, and she was her family was deeply impacted by the raid that happened in 2006. And that's when I first met her. She was 17 years old and I was a baby organizer back then. And so we've known each other a long time. She's worked for Iowa MMJ now for a couple of years and doing really incredible things in Marshalltown and super proud of everything that she's worked to build since the raid and then since the derecho and everything since. And then the other one is from Barb Kalba, who is a CCI member, been a longtime leader in working to protect family farms and the environment in the state of Iowa, and is just a really good progressive voice in our state. So I can drop the links to those articles in the chat too in a second once I figure out where I am on my screens. Multiple
Well,
screens here.
Erica, while
Yeah.
you do that, I'll just
Yeah.
to close the loop, and it's a little bit redundant, but I just what I like again about all the stuff lifted up in this report is that they come across as real common sense that benefit everyone. And I just want to reiterate that uh, that right now, I think that nationally anyway, or through traditional media sources, a lot of the conversation is about things that people don't agree on or the bickering going on. And I do truly believe that a majority of Iowans, a majority of Americans are sick of that, that we also we want things that bring us together. We want things that benefit our communities collectively that we all benefit from. And then where did it go in the chat? Yeah. What Annie said, in Marshalltown, it's like it's the people that currently make up Marshalltown that make it tick, that make it thrive and lively. Um, and and the stuff in here is things that we can talk with anyone about, really.
Mhm.
And then as now I see you've got the links in the chat and like that. What Barb says at the end of her piece, she says, I've never been too interested in what billionaires think this country should be or the policies we should pursue. Instead, Washington has a whole heck of a lot they could learn from us in rural America. And I think that's true. And just, I think is that when we stop talking with each other is when we lose.
Love it. Yay, Barb. Snaps to Barb. Um, well, this is, I mean, where we kind of say, all right, now what? Because for those who know me or spend any time in webinars and trainings with me, it's really important that we always end with an action step. And so that's what we're going to do. Because I think, again, what's the reason why we wanted to talk about this today is because too many times right now things feel heavy and things feel hopeless. And you all are doing a great job finding the joy, evidently, in your dancing and your quilts. And I love that for you. And also, I want to kind of put forward and just sort of underscore kind of what Matthew was just saying. Like, we don't have to settle for the solutions that we're seeing from our elected officials. We don't have to. There are other solutions out there that would benefit all of us rather than just a few billionaires. And they're not they shouldn't be dividing us. They're not Republican issues, they're not Democratic issues, they're not independent issues, they're human being issues. And we have to have hope in order to move forward. So the question is, what can you do? We've got three things, or kind of, three categories of things that you can do. The first one is to build connections. There's more. What was your quote? I should have written it down, Matthew. There's more that brings us together than divides us. It was something like that. And there are all kinds of community organizations out there. If there's not one where you are, you can make one, or you can join with one of the statewide organizations that exist already, like Iowa MMJ or Iowa CCI. We're both membership organizations, and we're happy to support any local organizing that's happening on the ground where you are on these issues. The second thing that we're asking folks to do is to show up. I really, want to take some of these proposals and attend a town hall meeting or organize our own. We've been organizing some of our own meetings with candidates for US Senate, candidate for Iowa governor, candidates for the Iowa State House, and just ask them, have you seen this report? Is there like what pieces of this are you excited about moving forward to benefit Iowans? And just see what they have to say. Ask questions to see what they would support. It's really important to get this in front of folks, in front of candidates, so they know that there's a blueprint and there are solutions out there. And then lastly, what we're asking folks to do is spread the word. Because again, I think that the heaviness of this time can feel overwhelming, and it would be really helpful to hear from others in our communities that there are practical solutions that would benefit all of us, not just the few. You can do that by writing a letter to the editor. The two examples that we just shared with you from Times Republican and what was it, Clinton Herald, you can write a letter to the editor in response to those things, and it'll probably get published. And it's just a way for like local folks to kind of share your perspectives with each other and hear what other people in your community are thinking. Similarly, calling into radio shows is another really good way to do that. I'm not sure what radio station you'll listen to, but they can be statewide or local folks that you call into, again, just to kind of help us build a more positive, proactive narrative that is visioning a future that is healthy and solid and safe for all of us. And then lastly, posting on your social media. This is something that we've been working with we call them our narrative change ambassadors around the state to really use a more pro-immigrant narrative, and so that folks become familiar with that. And so this is something you can do on your personal social media, taking some of these ideas out and just what do people think about this, and starting conversations that way too. All right, what am I missing?
Well, Erica, if you well, those are all great, I think. And I would plus one on doing all of those. But then interested in your thoughts on a question in the chat that I'll just touch on briefly. First of all, it's like, well, it's not always easy, Sandra. I would say, but the first step is trying, and that another thing that I remind myself is that we're not going to reach all of the people all of the time. We just need to reach more people. And yeah, okay, so we agree that there's a problem, but we don't agree on how to resolve them, maybe a step. And again, like I said, I don't think any of this is easy. It takes time, but I think it's worth doing to build community because then that builds trust. So first of all, build trust with the person and curiosity. And it's like, well, I want to hear more. Why do you believe that? But then I think a step before getting to agreeing on how to resolve the problems is if you can agree on who the enemy is or who is doing the violation, that helps. And one thing that we see, I'd say more often than not, the enemy are big corporations and wealthy and billionaire interests. And so, I think it's a big, ugly bill that was passed this summer, but that pretty clear one on like, regardless of if you think there should be like some Medicaid work requirements, which I don't really am not a big fan of that. Um, but what that bill does is that it unjustly kicks off hundreds of thousands of people off of health care in order to send nearly $1 trillion in tax breaks to people who are already wealthy. And so, like, we can disagree on how to reshape our healthcare system, but I, what do you think about people who are already insanely wealthy getting even more tax breaks at our community's expense? Because we can see with these rural hospital closures, et cetera. Anyway, Erica, your thoughts on any of that?
It's a good question, Sandra. And I think Annie, maybe your response is just echoing some of what you said, Matthew, is um yeah, it's hard to have some of these conversations right now, and they still need to happen. It's both and. Um, we spend not, we spend quite a bit of time talking about audience here at IOMMJ, and like Matthew said, we know we're not going to convince everyone. There's a spectrum of viewpoints and audiences, and so we know that some folks are really solidly on our side, and we know that some folks are really solidly not on our side, and so we have to make intentional decisions about where we prioritize spending our time and energy. And and we know that there's some folks that are more likely, maybe they're not a good and they're not with us right now, but this is something that they could like latch onto. This being this report or this being something else that we can find common self-interest in, a thing that we're both interested in that serves both of our needs. And that's important too. So again, yes, Sandra, I don't want to it's not true that we believe that we can convince everyone that immigrants are beneficial to Iowa. Um, we believe that we're not going to be able to convince everyone of that. Some people don't believe that that's true for whatever reason. Maybe it's racism, maybe it's something else. But we're not going to like waste our breath necessarily trying to convince people who have deeply held beliefs that are really contradictory to ours to come to our side. But we are going to spend time talking to people because we believe that more often than not, there's more that we have in common that divides us. Not every time, but more often than not. And so it's, yeah, just starting the conversation with curiosity, like Matthew said, and going from there. And I did want to say, I feel like I said a lot already, but the last thing I wanted to say is that we've also been talking a lot about the concept of narrative and what is the dominant narrative right now and who does it serve and where did it come from? And what we've learned is that, the narrative that we currently are seeing, which is a predominantly white supremacist narrative that benefits those who already have, that was intentionally built over a long period of time. And we can kind of look back through history and see sort of the footprints of how we got here. And so what that tells me is that there has to be a way out of the narrative that we find ourselves in, that we then can make our own footprints. We can make our own road by walking it and move the narrative in one that is in a direction of one that is more inclusive, more welcoming, and healthier and safer for everyone. But that might take a long time. All right. I see a lot from Jan. Jan, do you want us to read this or do you want to come off mute? What do you think?
Um, there are a couple of things that I thought were important with respect to this particular moment where the government is closed and SNAP benefits are being eliminated, and and that is that in in the spirit of the report that was done, um, is anybody working on the whole question of the relationship between farmers' well-being and the ending of SNAP benefits? And then the second question I had was of the people who are on the uh, call. Does anybody has anybody done anything in relation to making sure that immigrants and particularly undocumented people receive uh, adequate amounts of food while SNAP benefits are eliminated? So those are my two questions.
Thanks, Jan. Um, I have thoughts on the first question, and then I can maybe answer the second one. But did you want to jump in, Matthew?
Oh, I'll let you go first.
All right. So on the first question, Jan, I don't know that I have like a direct answer to it, but what it makes me think of is the importance of building coalitions. Um,
Mhm.
so, so what I mean by that is I know that Iowa MMJ is an immigrant rights organization. And as such, if we are only mobilizing immigrants and refugees in the state in order to address the issues that are important to them, then we will only ever get around 6% of the population if we mobilize the entire foreign-born population in the state, right? Because the foreign-born population in Iowa, according to people who know, and the American Immigration Council and Migration Policy Institute is that they make up about 6% of the population in Iowa. So alone, immigrants and refugees are not going to be able to probably have the people power necessary to bring about the structural changes that we need. And so Iowa MMJ believes very strongly that we have to work in coalition. And the way we work in coalition is figuring out those points of intersection that you've identified, like you've identified here, Jan, of how are farmers going to be impacted and local businesses with SNAP benefits being ended, and helping people understand their own self-interest in these things. And because that's the way that we organize, that's the way we get people to take action. Now, we are working on that. We have not achieved building a broad, powerful coalition, but that's why we continue to show up, and that's why we're feel honored to share space with you all, both familiar faces and folks who maybe are new, and why we'll continue trying to grow the movement that we're building. And also why we wanted to be here with our good friends from Iowa CCI, because they are valued coalition partners and have been for a long time.
Yeah,
Good.
and again, good questions. No, no easy or quick solution. But yeah, and I was just thinking, just yesterday, the Iowa Farmers Union on their Lunch and Learn on Facebook had Luke Elzinga from Des Moines Area Religious Council and the Iowa Hunger Coalition on to talk about SNAP, and so that to speak to that coalition work that Erica was talking about, and then I think also, yeah, important to kind of like going back to like how do we reach people, and as much as it pains me to say this, I guess the economy is important to people. But so if we continue to, yeah, if SNAP is not going through, that's a strain on our food banks. That's a strain on our grocery stores, especially rural grocery stores. And so it's like, I value being able to go to the store and get what I need. And in this current situation, even that then is, it could impact that. And so can't we all agree that like the point to which this has reached is a little absurd, and that let's make sure that everyone's basic needs are met, because then it does have a secondary impact on all of us.
Good. Thanks.
Um, and then your second question, Jan, I didn't want to leave that hanging, but yeah, so most undocumented folks don't receive public benefits. In some cases, small children might receive benefits, like under the WIC program and others, and all of that is being attacked right now. And so there are groups, and maybe that's what this comment from about Amos is getting at. I'm not sure. There are organizations, nonprofits, and faith communities that are even Hy-Vee. I think I saw Hy-Vee is giving free meals like between 4 and 7 to kids. So there's lots of groups that are acknowledging that this is a crisis, that this is a disaster that again is caused by politicians and and are taking steps to fix it, but it's not sustainable, right? We're looking for sustainable solutions that make it so people don't go hungry. So anyway, yeah, there's lots of folks that are kind of taking action right now, but it's the long-term change is something different. Did you want to jump into the person who put the comment about AMIS, the Mid-Iowa Organizing Strategy, the listing campaign?
Yeah, I can speak to it. Whoops, sorry. There's some others on the call, apparently, at least that I'm looking at, that are also involved with Amos. Um, this is a beginning effort, but there have been some meetings held already in Perry, Madrid, and Waterloo in an effort to reach out to people who are in rural areas, especially family farms, that will address some of the concerns that they are having and bring up to date where their issues are, and tried to put together a platform that of things that we can work on and people who can take leadership in those areas to really speak to the issues in those local areas. I don't know if that says it very well, but it's in the initial stages. So we'll see where it goes.
Good to know. Thank you.
Mhm.
A couple of comments in the chat. I see Annie, you don't need to apologize for being chatty. It's great. We love chatty chats. But yeah, I think what I'm taking away, number one, that's awful. I'm sorry that you're having to go through that. And also telling the story about like tracing the route of how it happened, it can be really helpful. And I appreciate you sharing that with us. Yes, facts do matter. Stories matter, human connections matter, all of that stuff helps build connections with each other. So I appreciate you sharing that with us, being vulnerable, and I'm sorry that happened. More discussion about SNAP. Rick, you're Googling things. Thank you for educating us on everything you learned in Google. Okay, Sue, you've heard that undocumented folks are afraid to go to food pantries and distribution sites in Iowa and elsewhere, but how can we find them to help them? That's a good question. That I would say though is nothing new. Undocumented folks have always been afraid to go to food pantries and distribution sites, usually because they are asked for or perceive that they will be asked for some form of identification. And sometimes people don't have that, or sometimes they are nervous about handing over a like consular ID card or a foreign passport because they think that that might, um, you know, send up red flags or people or for, yeah, or something. So that's always been a problem. I think it's more pronounced now for sure. Again, there's lots of good work that's happening. A lot of food pantries are being really proactive about saying, we don't care about your status, not our job. We're not going to ask for an ID. So to the extent that you're seeing that fear reflected in your community, or you're hearing in your community where you live that people aren't going to food pantries, I'd say just call up the food pantry and say, hey, what are you doing to make people feel welcome? Are you being proactive and saying we welcome everyone? And if not, help them think through how to do that. There's all kinds of good examples out there. I'm reading, sorry. Sorry for the awkward silence. It's going to be weird on the recording. Um, All right, Vanessa, do you want to, Jan likes her comment. Anybody want to kind of come off mute and share more thoughts? That's all right if not. It is a lunch and learn after all. Oh, perfect. Lunch and learn, work out and learn, all the same. Love that. Well, hopefully this was helpful in terms of, if nothing else, offering a little bit of hope in terms of, there are some solutions out there. Um, and in terms of action steps, what we can be doing together, what we can be building together. I want to thank all of you for joining today. The good discussion in the chat. Thank you for sharing stories. This slide, you can see the contact information that you can find IOMMJ. If you have follow-up questions for either Matthew or I, or for the folks who put together the report, we're happy to put you in contact with them too, if that's helpful. If there's things that we can be doing to support you with some of the specific questions you had or some of the specific initiatives that are happening, feel free to reach out to Matthew. If you don't want to put your contact information in the chat, I can just funnel people to you. No worries. There it is. Cool. Well, thank you, everyone. Happy Friday. I hope you all have a lovely, fun-filled, joy-filled, hope-filled weekend. See you later.